Hello, this is Lee, back again, looking at my DVD collection. And as you can see, there's many digital versatile discs here, and not just Shimmer, but some others I'd like to talk about. I showed you some others in my previous video. Here we have a series I'm quite fond of, known as Joshi for Hope. Now, I first heard about this some years ago. They are a charity, actually. They were formed before the deadly tsunami in Japan, so they were around before. But once that hit, I think many more people heard about them, because they did help gather funds for various relief efforts during the tsunami. They do other work. Primarily it's done by wrestlers. The very first Joshi for Hope video, I originally didn't purchase it. I saw a clip, and there was a match. Something went wrong. It didn't quite look like the usual quality, and so I kind of ignored it. Later on, I did purchase it. I believe it was from High Spots. But anyway, this is Joshi for Hope. And normally, if I wanted to watch Japanese wrestling, I would watch Japanese wrestling. I wouldn't watch something that mixed North American wrestlers in. But what happened in this case is Australian wrestler, champion Madison Eagles from Shimmer, appeared here, along with some others. Haley Hatred, who is a larger woman, not the largest, but larger than many of her opponents. Let's see, who else was here? This Cherry Bomb, Sexy Star, who appears in Lucha Underground, who I was not a fan of at this time, but I've come to appreciate her talents now, seeing Lucha Underground. At this time, not so much. But Ayumi Kurihara and Tomoka Nakagawa, basically many of the Joshi performers who we see in 2010, 2011 in Shimmer, were at home here. And this series of matches, it's actually a shorter show, and a lot of the entrances are cut. The arena they're in is very small and very dark. The audience is very quiet, so it's actually very hard to tell if there's almost anyone there. And that's a little disorienting. So, I believe that since this was a charity, it probably wasn't as big and well promoted as some of the wrestling matches, which is too bad. But I think they made the money by selling the DVDs. So, I would check it out, but don't expect the same level of grandeur that you might associate with promotions like this. It's for a good cause, I suppose. So that's Joshi for Hope. There was a sequel of sorts. It actually took some time to come out. Joshi for Hope 2 was actually the Joshi for Hope Christmas special, which I thought was far too delightful to pass up. A Christmas special. In Japan, of course, Christmas is more like Valentine's Day. Of course, Christmas in the United States has become a secular holiday. Certainly there's a religious component to it. But even people who are not Christian will celebrate Christmas. Well, Japan is not largely Christian. There's a very small minority. And yet there's an influence on the Christmas holiday. But generally, the public doesn't celebrate it the same way. That said, there are some things in common. Christmas trees and reindeer and carols and things like that. This sort of secular fun. Well, Joshi for Hope 2, the Christmas special, is here in this DVD. It's a shorter show, but there's also combined with the Joshi for Hope 3. So this is actually, I would say, one of the best of the Joshi for Hope DVDs, simply because it has more content. I believe it's 2 hours instead of 1 hour, like the previous one. But you have many of the same performers. You have an array of Joshi wrestlers, you also have many Shimmer regulars appearing. And there's some jokes. I will say that there's a referee who appears in some of the later shows. I think might be here too. She, at times, I felt as if she would count. And in Joshi wrestling, it's 1, 2, 3 is often how they do it. It's not just 1, 2, 3. When the referee counts a wrestler out, when they a pinfall. So there's a bit of a delay anyway, but I felt at times the referee would go 1, 2, and then she would kind of stop as if it's not supposed to be over yet. I was just listening to a podcast the other day. I think it was the Solo Monster. Kudos to him for his. I don't get money from him, but I'm just thanking him for his quality. Anyway, he was saying something about how referees are often trained simply to play it straight. Of course, if the wrestlers forget to kick out of a pin when they're being pinned, they're just supposed to call it like they see it, unless someone interferes. Well, this particular referee just seemed to kind of drop the ball. I suppose the match must go on, but she must not have been trained that same way. Anyway, that was my only real criticism of overall. Now, I suppose you could argue, if there was a commentator that would say, oh, they got the shoulder up, or, oh, there was too close to the ropes, or, something like that, but that would have helped. Since I don't speak the Japanese language, I couldn't necessarily understand, but just watching it visually, there was just something a little bit off. And of course, they're only humans, so people make mistakes, and sometimes you miss it, and we still suspend disbelief, but I think that could have been a little bit better. And I'm sure this particular referee has a long history, and I shouldn't be criticizing, but was my opinion. So Joshi for Hope, Christmas special. I really wish that they had had some songs. I think that would have really made it that much more special, but maybe next year. Well, unfortunately, the following year they didn't do that, but here we have, if I'm getting the right ones, Joshi for Hope 4. I enjoyed this one very much. This had some very good matches. And some other wrestlers that I had not seen before, or seen much of. I think what Joshi for Hope does is it takes a wrestler that maybe you're not sure about, kind of a new person, and it puts them against, a seasoned or a very impressive Japanese wrestler as kind of the gold standard, and sort of tests them, and it pushes them to be better. And it shows the fans that, you can take the best women wrestlers in the world and put them against these newcomers, and they don't always win. But if they can go the distance, that shows their potential and quality. And so I think it does a great job for their careers. And many of the women who talk about, the trips to Japan and seeing the very, very rigorous training, it's like boot camp they go through. And they come back with such a greater appreciation. It reminds me of a video I saw on the internet called Gaia Girls. And I believe even Haley Hatred, who appears on here, was asked, have you seen that? And she said, of course. And it talked about the rigorous training. When I watched the video, I kind of felt sorry for the girls, the young girls, really, that came to this training camp. They were just treated very poorly, I felt, by the teacher, who would just yell at them and slap them in the face. And it was just very, very strict. But overall, and this was not the only wrestling school they had, there were many others, the end result is many of these wrestlers come out very hardened through this rigorous training and psychological testing, but very impressive. They're the best in the world at what they do. At the same time, the Gaia girls show that was encased within this short documentary had this young girl who was at odds with the teacher. The teacher was very disapproving of her, almost bullying her at times. But she ended up succeeding and performing in the show. You could see the bruises on her body from the training. But at the end there was a message saying that she quit after, I think it was a year or two. So even with that, the message I got was that you can't force people to be good, to be successful. You can't bully people to success. So it doesn't always work. But for some of these great stars, their training paid off. But anyway, I thought it was a great, interesting look into sort of the culture that we don't see behind the scenes of these professional wrestlers. Certainly they sacrifice a lot to do what they do. Not everyone can do this. As with many athletes, the potential for injuries, the risks, the temptations of fame, time away from family, all these kinds of things. Not everyone comes out with a wonderful life. Sometimes there are many trials and tribulations. I mentioned beyond the mat. That's not to say that we need to feel sorry for them, but at the same time, just understand that sometimes when wrestlers, they don't always measure up to fan expectations. Sometimes it's just because there's too much pressure. It really is. They're only human after all, even though we treat them as if they are superheroes. A little reflection. And then finally, the last of my collection, Joshi for Hope 5. More of the same, really. I wish the matches were longer. I wish there were more of them. I wish the entrances weren't cut. I wish that there was translation. I find it funny that an English-speaking wrestler will come out and give a speech in English, and then everyone else will just kind of nod and acknowledge and then continue talking in Japanese. Everything just blends together, and it's really no big deal. Shimmer, I think, has imitated that. At times they had some very strange segments where an English-speaking wrestler and a Japanese-speaking wrestler would just stand together, and the one wrestler would speak in English and say a big long speech, and the other wrestler would just kind of nod their head and kind of smile and look tough, as if they had no clue what was being said, which they probably didn't. At other times they would have the Japanese wrestler memorize something, probably, and say some sentence like, "I'm going to win," or something like that. And, of course, when you watch it and you're an English speaker, it looks very hokey. But, of course, if you watch that same wrestler in their own promotions, where everyone spoke the same language, they could give an amazing promo speech, and everyone would cheer or boo or whatever. But it's just because they're out of their element. What more can we expect? I suppose that with limited time and resources, not much else can be done. But when there's simply just people allowed to be themselves, and you speak German, and you speak German in your promo, and people can do what they want with it. But it would be nice if there was maybe a little translation or subtitles or something. I suppose that costs extra money, and a lot of these are on a light budget. But I would say each of the Joshi for Hope episodes is worth seeing, but also keeping in mind that it's not as high budget as the rest. Anyway, thank you for listening. I'll be back soon, hopefully with another video. Thank you for your time.